We are so excited to have Illiterate Light in our studios. Thanks for coming in, guys.
Thanks for having us.
No show tonight, but you're coming in before, about an 8 to 10 hour commute. So,
Yep. 10 hours on I-70, right?
yeah.
Yep.
Beautiful,
One highway. Yeah.
Beautiful drive. People either love that drive or they hate it.
If we went east instead of west, we'd end up like right where I grew up on the East Coast in Baltimore, Maryland. Literally 70 goes all the way across the country. So I feel like I'm close to home, even though we're 1,500 miles away.
Yeah. You know, it's funny, you guys based out of Virginia, but really got big first in Nashville.
Yeah. We started touring in 2015 or 2016, and pretty early on knew that Harrisonburg, our hometown, it's in the Shenandoah Valley. It's about 2 hours outside D.C., 2 hours outside Richmond. It's a beautiful part of the country and an incredible music scene. But if you're going to gain a real following and kind of make some moves in the industry, you need to be in different cities, bigger cities. So we started touring really heavily early on, and Nashville was just one of the cities that kind of jumped on board with our live show right away. It's also the place where my uncle, who's been a mentor to us for a few years now, he's based out of there, and he told us really early on, he was like, you don't have to move to Nashville like everybody's doing, but you guys need to be here really often. So probably in 2016, we started playing there once a month, and I think at this point we've played there over 40 times or so now.
Wow.
So yeah, we've definitely put in our time in Nashville, and to the point that Jake's actually moving there in a couple weeks.
Yeah, that's exciting. And it's an 8-hour drive from our hometown, so it's once or twice a month for 2 years was not just on a whim. It was very we're going to Nashville.
Yeah. You know, becoming one of the favorite local bands in Nashville without living there was probably...
Yeah, I mean, half the write-ups that we get at this point say, like, Nashville duo, Illiterate Light, or then New York pop duo, Illiterate Light, or Richmond duo, Illiterate Light. We live in this small podunk town, but it's okay if people think we live in other cities. We've got a lot of pride in our hometown, but we're always traveling, so people don't really know where we're from at this point.
Let's talk about the title of the band, the name of the band, Illiterate Light, Wilco.
Yeah. So we it's funny because we just played Newport Folk Festival in Newport, Rhode Island a couple weekends ago, and sat side stage while Jeff Tweedy, the frontman of Wilco, played an entire acoustic set. I just read his autobiography, Let's Go So We Can Get Back, and I loved every second of it. But we're both big Wilco fans. I often attribute the discovering of our band name to the summer of 2014, when I got into one of their records, A Ghost Is Born. It was their 2004 album. And there's a song on there called Theologians. And there's a line, that illiterate light is with us every night. And I just remember after a long day of Jake and I working on this farm, I was sitting in my bathtub, drinking a beer, eating a sweet potato, and listening to A Ghost Is Born. And I liked that line. I thought there was a lot of punch to illiterate light, and it kind of reminded me of some sort of, cosmic force of energy or something. So we just kind of kept it on the back burner for 2 years, and then when we formed this band, that felt like a pretty cool name and a cool way to pay tribute to some of our heroes.
You know, this is a digression that I really didn't think that I'd go on, but how exactly do you eat a sweet potato in the bathtub?
It is possible, yeah. Well, I was boiling the sweet potato in the bathtub water. We spent a couple years working on a farm and learning how to grow our own food and selling at farmers markets and local restaurants and local cooperatives and whatnot, and we failed miserably with certain crops, and certain things did really well, and we had a great sweet potato harvest. So for we cured them and ate them for a very long time, and so I love sweet potatoes, and I don't know, it was like somewhere between dinner and dessert. I'd boil it and then throw a bunch of butter and brown sugar and maple syrup, and then get like a big like Guinness or something to go along with it, and that was that was dinner a lot of nights.
So I'm assuming this was in a bowl.
Yeah, this was in a bowl. Yeah.
Not in my head. In my head, just
Holding it in one hand like that.
it's like a Chipotle burrito.
Yeah.
He's just unwrapping it slowly.
I kind of like that idea. Yeah. This was in a bowl.
Well, on that farm, often, that 1 year in particular, the main three things that we were able to successfully grow were sweet potatoes, onions, and turnips. And not so much on the sweet potatoes, but we got to the point where we would be working on the farm and starving, and we would just open a sweet onion and just go straight to the face with it, or a turnip.
Yeah.
And it was just a silly idea when I think back on it, but it was really good at the
If you get
time.
an onion
So
sweet enough, I know other people who
Yeah,
do that.
no,
We had some moments on the farm. There was again, we're two guys that grew up really outside of Baltimore and D.C., great households, but pretty traditional suburban upbringing. Definitely neither of us really had a green thumb. And so when we started learning about agriculture, and organic agriculture was a real big learning curve for us. And we kind of quickly went from being interns on this farm to the farm owner kind of passing it off to us and us basically sharecropping with him. And we had to figure out what to sell and how to grow stuff. And one of our more brilliant ideas was, so the farm was called Wildside, and we thought of the Wildside Wild mix. And that was basically when our lettuce and spinach and kale didn't grow well. We just went around like the 16 acres that Andrew owned and just found every like wild edible we could, which was already just growing there and did not taste good as a salad, but we put it together and kind of package it. We called it the Wildside Wild mix. Like, these are all totally edible, basically weeds that grow in your backyard.
that's
Want to buy it for $5?
a bag of dandelions.
Yeah, you can eat dandelions.
We're at a farmers market that's mainly Mennonite farmers and people that have just been doing this their whole life, and they'll walk up to us and just very kindly but be like, Wildside Wild mix. So they'd pick it up and be like, I have enough weeds on my farm.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Our biggest crop that year, not our biggest crop, our biggest seller at the farmer's market was our homebrewed mint tea, which is very funny looking back at it. You'd think, we'd have a bigger cash crop than that, but we nailed the mint tea. I think we should start selling that as merch at our shows now.
Well, I think that the music is pretty great. It probably is eclipsing the mint tea at this point. So if we'd love to hear a song, if
Let's
we could.
do it. This is, we'll kick off with a song called Sometimes Love Takes So Long.
But left by the window, we're going to see what in the world happened to you and me. Used to be red like strawberry bread, simple and sweet, and we both got fed. But now we're spitting sugar, lonely in my sometimes love takes so long. Here's my heart to write on. Every word is bitter sweet. Your therapist, my shaking knees, knocked together desperately. We made a promise, one that we can't keep. Too young to understand, and now I'm too old to give a damn. What in the world happened to you and me? So don't break the silence with empty Here's my heart to write on. Every word is bitter sweet. Sometimes love takes so long. Come on, sweet, to stay strong. Circle back to you and me. La da ba ba da, la da da ba da ba ba dee da do bo. Ba da ba ba ba, da 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 ba dee da do bo. Ba da ba ba da, la da da da, na da 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 da. La da 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 da, la da 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 da. And sometimes love takes so long. Here's my heart to write on. Every word is bitter sweet. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sometimes love takes so long. Come on, sweet, to stay strong. Circle back to you and me. Sometimes love takes so long.
Illiterate Light today on the bridge, an album coming soon from Atlantic Records. And we have the whole band here today. A lot of times, two people is sort of a stripped down thing, but this is it.
Yeah.
Jeff Gorman and Jake Cochran. So this is actually the full band, but it is a little stripped down.
Yeah, this is very stripped down for us, which is it's cool. We like being able to get raw like this and pull it all back. But our live setup is pretty heavy. The record's pretty heavy. I play electric guitar and I play bass with my feet through a contraption. I'm kind of modeling it off of something that came out in the 70s called the Taurus. But basically, it's a big keyboard for my feet. Like if you can imagine that scene from Big with Tom Hanks, you know, that's obviously a massive piano, but it's a smaller version of that, and I'm tapping along the bass with my feet as we play, and then singing lead. And then Jake over here can describe his setup.
So I'm playing a pretty standard drum set, but at some point I started to stand up while I did that, and then I made all the drum pieces taller and rearranged them. So a lot of drummers will look at it and think I'm doing something special or unique, or I'm playing open-handed, or like there's these kind of nerdy drummer things that people are like, whoa, he's doing that. It turns out that I'm not. I'm just standing up. And there's something interesting about that. I'm still playing kick drum. I'm balancing on one foot. Jeff is as well. He's playing bass with one foot balancing. So we're really like, both of our left feet are very.
Our left quads are massive.
My right shin is unusually strong, and my left quad is unusually strong.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're super active. We jump around, move around. It's a pretty it's a good contrast to what we're doing right now, I think.
It's a high energy rock show.
So when you first saw that bass pedal thing in a used gear shop, you had no idea what it was.
I didn't, but we had just become a duo, and I'd been experimenting with, there's a lot of duos out there that do a guitar and drum thing, and obviously the White Stripes and the Black Keys are two really big ones. But I haven't seen many duos that have figured out how to have a low end, how to basically have a bass sound live. And so I'd been experimenting with some different ways for how can we fill out the sound, how can we make it feel like it's more than just a guitar. And when I saw that, I just bought it for $250 from my friend Elliot, and it sat there for about 6 months until I finally started to piece it together. And it was really a learning curve of about a year and a half. I mean, it's at this point it feels pretty natural, but it's a pretty strange sensation to be doing this with your hands and doing another thing with your feet, and then sing or take a solo, and it's and then try to look at the audience, and then try to look at Jake, and it's like, you know, my wife makes fun of me because like I can't chew bubble gum and walk at the same time or something. Like if we're having like a serious conversation, I just need to like sit there and just give it my full attention. She's like, you do like 15 things on stage and it all happens. But there's certain other things. I'm such like a single tasker. I'm not a multitasker.
If Jeff and I need to have a conversation about something, and I'm like, let's go on a walk and talk about this.
I'm like, it's too many distractions out there, man.
I just need to sit down. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like on stage and with music, we find this way to enter into another state of consciousness, if you will, where it all just starts flowing and working. But anyways, it took a while to get comfortable doing that, and part of our backstory is that we spent a couple years after farming just playing bar gigs and doing cover shows and playing weddings and just getting comfortable in front of people and getting comfortable playing for 3 or 4 hours a night, which is, you know, a lot of other indie and DIY bands didn't think it was very cool that we'd be playing Sweet Home Alabama for covers each night, or for whatever tips each night. But that was how we developed our chops, and that's how I got comfortable playing bass with my feet. That's how Jake got comfortable standing up, and that's how we got comfortable just figuring out how to work a crowd. I mean, we'd play weddings and do dance-offs and stuff like that. And we don't do dance-offs in our live show now, but there's something about just jumping out into a crowd of people and rallying everybody and saying, let's do something fun right now, that we got to develop in these weird environments. And so that's kind of made its way into this iteration of Illiterate Light.
So, and that is sort of like the challenge, and you kind of alluded to it in a way, but like you're not only each of you doing multiple things, but you're also really focused on engaging with the audience.
That's got to almost be number one. You know, it's just like in this day and age, it's just we've seen so many rock bands stand up on stage and stare at their feet and play their songs, and it's just not what we're trying to do. And so we really want to be engaged with people and be able to make eye contact. And, you know, for a lot of what we do is we jive with the audience, and we kind of have an energy going back and forth between us. And so when they get really into it, like at Newport Folk Festival the other weekend, it was just like you could just feel it hitting the stage, and that was fueling us the whole show. And if I'm staring at my feet the whole time because I'm doing the bass thing, we're just going to lose that. So that's so important for the live show from a performance standpoint.
So when you start to work up a new song, you don't all come in doing all of the things that you do right off the bat.
Kind of have to build it.
Yeah, it's an interesting process writing for this setup, and it means that there's cool stuff that one of us has written, and then we bring it together, and it's like Jeff will be like, "Can you do this drum beat?" And I'll just say, "I don't think so. Like I'm not using my left foot. There's some things I can't do." Or I'll bring a song to Jeff and be like, "Hey, I got this cool bass line." He'll be like, I can't do that with my foot, or it's in the wrong key, or there's all these weird limitations that shape the exact thing, the exact song that we're doing. And it's really cool. Some of the songs that we have, it's cool to take to this much more traditional setting. And we've sort of built into our electric set. Right now we're pulling off to the side for 2 songs in the set and getting on one mic together and really just kind of centering in on like, hey, we're doing a very weird and unique thing, but at the base of it, it's these songs that we love writing, and the song can transfer to this, and it can also transfer to that, and so having the ability to like the limitation of what we do is exciting, and it pushes us in a direction, but then there's times where it feels a little bit like it's not a good limitation. It's like
it's
I'm a little
just limiting.
here. Yeah.
Sometimes limitations are limiting.
You know,
often they breed creativity, though. So
yeah. So you guys actually met around a decade ago, going to school at James Madison University. Jeff, you studied history, and Jake, you studied health science. Both vastly important fields for a career in the music industry.
Yeah, it was a prereq for starting this band. You know, it was our mentor said you really both need to go to college and study important topics like you've done, and now you're ready.
You actually had an earlier band, Money Cannot Be Eaten, 3-piece, and when the other guy left the band, that's when a lot of this sort of rethinking, re-engineering the band happened. It happened over a period of time. And was that when the farm stuff kicked in?
That was all kind of happening at the same time. So we formed. So Jake and I graduated from JMU in 2012. We had formed our band Money Cannot Be Eaten in 2011, which was a line from I believe it was a Cree Indian kind of saying or prophecy, which was, after the last river has been poisoned, after the last fish has been caught, and after the last tree has been cut down, will we realize that money cannot be eaten, or you cannot eat money. And so we named our band Money Cannot Be Eaten, which was a mouthful, as is Illiterate Light. And we were touring for just around the valley, and a big part of that band was doing these bicycle tours. And we were heavily involved with the community at the time that was had a real ecological awareness and sensibility to them, and wanted to figure out is there any way that you can actually tour and be a modern musician without having to use fossil fuels, which is really difficult to do. But we jumped out on our bicycles and gave it a whirl for 4 or 5 years every summer. So anyways, long story short, we were working on the farm from 2012, 2013, 2014. Money Cannot Be Eaten. We were really ready for that. It might sound funny now, but it was like we were really ready for that to be like, this is it. This is our band. Like, let's do this thing. So we had been working on the farm, and we were just kind of transitioning off from working on the farm to go full ahead. Let's just tour. Let's be a band. Let's focus on music. It's just impossible to do both. We found you can't farm and be a professional musician. So right when we kind of made that switch, our organ player, John, decided to quit the band, and it kind of sent a big shockwave into what the next 5 or 10 years of our life was going to look like. So Jake had recently gotten married. He moved up to a town about an hour north of us and did an apprenticeship learning how to build tiny homes. Very small. Yes, about 1 foot by 1 foot. Enough for you to put your hand in. I'm sure it's pretty known in these days, the tiny home kind of revolution, building a home either in a small home in your backyard or even on a flatbed trailer that you can transport. I spent a year playing in a bunch of different kind of psychedelic projects and then also substitute teaching at the local high school and playing bar gigs and learning songs and just trying to figure out what I was volunteering at our community center. About 6 or 12 months after Money Cannot Be Eaten had broken up, Jake and I were hanging out one weekend, and I just kind of laid it out for him that I really missed living with him. I missed being best friends and playing music together, and then I wanted to form a new band and let's start something new here. And so we actually started as a trio. Again, we hadn't figured out the foot bass thing. Jake wasn't standing up, and we just kind of jumped out and started touring. And then pretty soon our bassist exited the band, and we figured out the duo thing in 2016. I can't even remember what the initial question was now.
I think you answered it.
Yeah. Golly day, man. Yeah.
I do have one other question though. It's sort of like, what did like jumping on the bike and going on tour look like? Did you strap all the gear on your back?
Yeah, well, it's a pretty weird thing to think about. We did it over 4 or 5 years. It was about 2 weeks a summer that we would typically do, and it sort of evolved. At first, it started, another friend's band was the one that really wanted to do it, and they had done it for a year or two before we even met them. And so we kind of jumped on and brought some new energy to it. And it started out by, like, let's bring as much stuff as we can so that we're, like, showing up at the gig, and we have, like, a little drum set, and we have Jeff and I still very much wanted to be a rock band. We didn't really want to be an acoustic, touring band, just because that wasn't our passion. And so for the first year it was like, let's bring some stuff and let's borrow an amp at the show and let's make sure the band that we play with has a full drum set I can use and maybe bring a keyboard or something like that. And then you pretty quickly realize Virginia is a lot of hills, a lot of mountains, and we're starting in a valley, and the first day was always let's get over Afton Mountain, and that's just like pretty quickly you're like, if I have a single extra T-shirt on my bike, I'm throwing it somewhere. Like I don't want anything. I'm pulling a trailer. So we could have learned that lesson quicker, but it took a few years, and we were kind of pared down quite a bit to just bringing a few acoustic instruments. And it really, the tour itself became more about just the community of people that would do it together and the things we would learn and the way that we would tour. And Jeff and I realized pretty quickly it was not a horrible way, but there was just so much else going on. It was very difficult to focus on the music, and we very much wanted to, give a certain type of show. But we would show up and had just biked 60 miles and stopped, and there's a family on tour with us this year, and they have kids, and so we're just insane and trying to. So. We hope to do it again someday, and we have a lot of ideas. We have a lot of ideas how we would do it in a way that is a little bit more music and tour centric, as opposed to just bringing anybody that wants to come, which was the initial idea.
On the bright side, though, it's probably that one period of your life where both quads were equally strong.
Yeah, that's true. We got to get back to that.
Illiterate Light is our guest today here on the bridge, and we'd love to hear another song.
Cool. Let's do a song now called. Is it cool if we do an ode to Neil Young? Let's do this. This is a song that we wrote a couple years ago. It's called "I Want to Leave America."
quite lovely.
Thanks.
Really like that a lot.
Thanks.
Illiterate Light in our studios today, and you guys have to be so excited about the new album coming out on Atlantic.
We are, yeah. It's been a few years for us, kind of, like we've said a handful of times. We're such a live centric band, and that's kind of the only way. It's the only way we know how to create music. When we formed the band, we just started touring. We jumped in my Subaru and just said, let's figure it out on the road and have it kind of evolve as we're out there. And figuring out how to take that into the studio, which is so different, it's taken us a couple years. I feel like one of the reasons we've decided to call this record, it's just a self-titled album, is because it feels like our true sound. It feels like we kind of found that sound and we're able to bottle it up and put it into the studio. And now we're really, really proud of it. I think it sounds really cool, and I think it's a great. I think it's a great way for people to get an introduction to who we are. And, so much of what we do, we love the studio and we love recording, but we also want to push people out to our live shows because that's what's fun and that's what's unique and interesting.
If you listen to the interview, you'd think you guys were born in college, and that's not really the case. Yeah, Jeff, you actually sort of set your life path at an amusement park when you were 7 years old. And you alluded earlier to your uncle, who's your mentor, and that's Steve Gorman, who is the Black Crowes drummer, and also has a new project, Trigger
Hippie.
Hippie. Yeah.
It's been cool watching Trigger Hippie kind of also evolve over the last few years. They've had a handful of different singers, and he's got a new book coming out. They've got a new record. We talk to Steve almost every day, every other day at this point.
So the book is called Hard to Handle: The Life and Death of the Black Crowes. Have you gotten to read a galley of it?
I have, yeah. And of course, growing up backstage with the Crowes, I kind of absorbed all of that from a very young age. It's cool to read it now, and he's an incredible storyteller. He's had a radio show for the last 3 or 4 years. He started a podcast in like 2011. It was Steve Gorman's Sports. It was sports and music, and so he'd get musicians and artists on there to talk about their favorite sports teams, and then he'd get athletes on there to talk about bands and music, and it was just this really cool coming together of those two things. And so he's always just he can talk, and he's very engaging. And in fact, we were out in Nashville when he was working on this book. The way they did it, the way he started, was he just sat there with the editor and just told stories for hours and just went through every year of the Black Crowes, pretty much starting in probably 1985, around when he moved to Atlanta, in the 4 years of the Crowes becoming the Black Crowes. And then he just said he's a great storyteller. And then they said, I think the book was like 1,000 pages initially. I think he's cut it down to 200 or 300. But I mean, they're kind of one of the last great American rock and roll bands. One of the last great American rock and roll bands pre-internet, and it was still another universe at that time. And I've gotten a chance to read it, but I also kind of grew up with it a little bit too. Although I was, a kid, but
right.
Yeah, it's cool to read it now.
So they were playing a festival gig at an amusement park, and I think most parents, if they say, "Well, Chris Robinson is going to take your young son backstage and give him candy," that would not be viewed as a good thing.
I don't think so. Yeah, and I should mention it was a very important amusement park. It was Hershey Park, the land of candy, and so we were. I love roller coasters, and even now when we're out on tour, we'll drive by an amusement park, and I'll be like, dude, Six Flags, that would be so sweet. I haven't been to one in years, but anyways, as a kid, they were playing this show. It was 1997, and it was with Bruce Hornsby and Rat Dog and maybe one or two of the other Grateful Dead spinoffs. I could be wrong. And I just remember they had these fast passes. These are all so basically you go to the amusement park and you can jump the line if you have the fast pass. And so my uncle took me and my two brothers, and we just went on these roller coasters all day, and it was just so much fun, such a blast. And then we got back to the show, and I'm watching them on stage, and it's so loud, and I'm looking out, and there's just tie-dye everywhere, and it was just, I was 7 and I just thought it was just the coolest thing ever. Like, heavy rock music has to be what I do with my life. And then, yeah, we ended up backstage afterwards, and Chris was like, "What's up, man? You want some candy?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And he takes me over and goes, "We're going to go into this guy's dressing room. His name's Rat Dog." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that is so funny, Rat Dog. Like, why would somebody name their band that? It doesn't make any sense." And it wasn't until like 10 years later that clicked for me who Rat Dog is. But he came out with these blow pops and gave me some candy. And so I think, I always feel like I've grown up a lot since then, but that was such a foundational moment between roller coasters, candy, and loud music. And it was just kind of like, yeah, let's do this thing.
Well, and now you're here.
And now we're here.
Have to come up with
Maybe
some candy.
One
really
day I can do
fast.
that with my nephews, hopefully. We'll see.
Yeah. So he was the uncle that said, "Come back to Nashville and play a lot." You're playing Nashville, and Vance Powell came to one of your gigs.
He did. Yeah. He came out to a venue there called The Basement, which is an awesome small club, probably 100-person capacity room. And Steve, my uncle, he really believed in us, and decided to bring a few folks out just to check us out, more people in the industry, a few agents, and a couple producers. And he sent a few live videos around to some people. And Vance came out, and we had known who Vance was. We were both huge fans of the Raconteurs, which was Jack White's band after the White Stripes. They had 2 records, Consolers of the Lonely and Broken Boy Soldier. Is that right? I'm confusing it with John Bickle's old song now. Whatever. Anyways, the first 2 Raconteurs records. Vance engineered both of those and possibly produced them. And so we knew who he was, and he came out, and he was just really cool. We hung out after the show, and he just said, "Come to the studio tomorrow. Let's get lunch. Let's have a beer and figure out what it would look like to work with each other." And Steve told us, right, he said, "If Vance comes to this show and offers to work with you, no matter what, you have to do it. I will not be your uncle anymore if you do not follow through with this." So Vance offered to work with us, and we were ecstatic.
But there's a problem, right? He's got 6 Grammys, and you've got no money.
Yeah, exactly. There's a little bit of a mix up there that we had to figure out. But he's cool, because he was just like, and that's the way Vance works. Is he's like, "I'll do it on spec. I'll do it why don't you guys come in for a few days? We'll just do it for free. If things work out, we'll figure it out from there." But he knows that we don't have it. He knew we didn't have any money, and he was super cool. And we just started. It literally lit a fire under us to like start writing in a very. We knew we've got 4 months until we're in the studio with Vance, and we've got to like really be ready. I don't even know what we're gonna record with him, but we need to have a ton of new material. So we really started cranking it out at that point and writing like crazy. And we went into the studio in Richmond to demo some stuff for him, and we ended up loving the way that sounded. And so we ended up actually, we didn't record the entire record with Vance. We did a few songs. He ended up mixing everything though, and we were really involved with that process. And we've done a bunch of other things with Vance now, and he's just such an incredible producer, an incredible person to work with, and somebody we really trust. But yeah, there was that, how do you do this? You've got 6 Grammys, we've got no money. You are busy for the next 6 months. Are we just going to wait around for that? There was a lot of forces that were floating around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got to be so interesting when you're so based around the live thing up to that point to sort of go into the studio. And it's complicated by the fact that you guys are actually, like, you could trade places. You both started as drummers. You can both play instruments. You both sing. And in the studio, it gets a lot more fluid.
Right. Yeah. You want to take a guitar solo right now, Jake?
Dude,
Show
I've
everybody.
been waiting. And that puppy.
We are both multi-instrumentalists, and with Money Cannot Be Eaten, our first legendary band, that was a time where we would switch off during the live show. And half the show I was on guitar and singing, and Jake was on drums, and then we'd flop, and he was on guitar. And so there are a couple songs on this album, like that song we just played, "I Want to Leave America," which is kind of an ode to Neil Young, looking for some of his wisdom as he's lived through Nixon and all these other folks like that. Jake has a guitar part on that song on the record. We've got another song called Wish I Didn't Have Any Problems, and I actually played the original drum part on that as a demo, and then Jake threw percussion over that and stuff. And so the studio is more fluid. You play keys on certain things, I play keys on other things. It is a place where we have I'm a stronger guitarist, Jake's a stronger drummer, but we definitely like to see what comes out when we just mix it up.
And also it's true that there was like moments of us kind of switching off, but a big change for us actually on recording this album, going in with Vance and then Adrian Olson and Charlie Glenn, two of the guys we worked with in Richmond. All of them knew us from our live show, and we had always done home recording before that, where we were just doing whatever we could to get the sound that we thought was cool. And they were all very specific about people need to hear your live setting in a way that can be recorded, and you just haven't worked with the right people yet. And we were like, oh, okay, so let's do that. And so learning so much about every song on that record is us, Jeff and I, in the studio facing each other, playing our entire parts straight through live, and then coming through and adding some parts in and stuff like that. But the energy of the entire thing is us in the room making it happen, and that's what happens at the show. And so it really started to gel for us, and it's the first time that we recorded this band and sat back and said, oh, like, this is what we've been trying to do. This sounds cooler than it did in my head. Like, thanks, Vance. Like, that's great.
Yeah. So did you use the foot bass on the album?
Yeah. I just play it straight up like I do in the live show. There's a few times here and there when we were tracking in Richmond, when one of our producers there, Charlie, would play certain parts. Like he was just on his knees. I can't do it because whatever. He'd be on his knees like this right next to me, and I'd be playing the song. And like we'd have a certain part where I'd be like, I'm not gonna be able to play guitar and nail this thing, so he would just jump in with his hands and start doing it, and that was really fun. He's kind of a scrawny, small guy, and so I don't know, it wasn't a big nuisance for me to have him there, but yeah, so we. Somebody that would be too, like, imagine Shaquille O'Neal.
Guy.
Imagine Shaq saying, I'm going to do this while you're trying. That would be very disturbing.
We saw Shaq at Lollapalooza, by the way.
So Charlie would be fine with me saying that. But anyways, so yeah, it's mainly it's the foot bass. It's the thing.
Very cool.
Yeah.
The band is Illiterate Light. New album coming on Atlantic Records. We'd love to have one more song if we could.
All right, let's do it. This is a song called Better Than I Used To.
There's only three things: rubber band ball bouncing around, and I make my monthly trip into town, grocery shop and restock on paint. Some days I feel good, and some days I feel bad, but every time that I think of you, I feel better than I used to. Every time that I think of you, I feel better than I used to. Supple shining moment between you and me, magnifying lost memories. Yeah, Monday morning, celebrating the week. What is it that you've done to me? Some days I feel good, and some I'm glowing like red nuclear waste. The sun shines down as I bubble up. Oh, silent scream, contain the vein. Pull me in when push comes to shove. Oh, every time that I think of you, I feel better than I used to. Every time that I think of you, I feel better than I used to. Every time that I think of you, I feel better than I used to. Every time that I think of you, I feel better than I used to.
Illiterate Light in our studios, Jeff Gorman, Jake Cochran. Thanks, guys, so much. I know that after you get done with this, you're going to like run to the car and start a 10-hour drive. And we talk about this all the time, but the sacrifices that people have to make on the road and to come in and do this for us. It's a gift, and
We're happy to do it. Yeah, thank you all so much. This really means a lot to us, and it's great to be here in Kansas City. I think it's going to be the first of many trips here.
All right, can't wait to get a show scheduled.
Yeah.
Here in town.
We'll be coming back.
All right, Illiterate Light live on the bridge.
All right. Thanks, everybody. They told us not to look at you throughout the thing. Sorry, we weren't trying to be standoffish.